Hello everyone, welcome to Books Mandala's YouTube channel. In this channel, we talk about everything and anything related to books. So, in today's video, we have the summary of the book, The Bell Jar. The Bell Jar is the story of a 19-year-old, a college student from Massachusetts named Esther Greenwood. The breakdown she experiences and the beginnings of her recovery. The year is 1953. Having finished college for the academic year and winning a 1-month paid internship at Ladies' Day magazine, she travels to New York to work as a guest editor. Esther's manager at Ladies' Day magazine, JC, is a hard-working, hard-hitting, homely professional who expects much of Esther. Esther lives in a women's hostel with 11 other college girls. Esther knows she should be having the time of her life, but she feels dead-end. But she cannot embrace the rebellious attitude of her friend Doreen, who chain smokes, dresses provocatively, and does not take her work seriously. We later learn about the struggles in Esther's life. Her father died when she was 9. While Esther wants to be a poet, her mother wants her to learn shorthand so that she will have a vocation to fall back on. She has been dating Buddy Willard, a medical student at Yale, who bores her and discredits the things she likes: poetry, literature, creation. Buddy asks her to marry him, to which she refuses. One evening at the beginning of the novel, Esther and Doreen head out in a cab to the event scheduled for the contest winners. They get stuck in a traffic jam and are approached by Lenny Shepard, a local oar, and his friend Frankie. Lenny latches on to Doreen and Frankie makes his excuses and leaves. Esther, Doreen, and Lenny end up in Lenny's lush apartment. Esther watches Doreen and Lenny get more drunk and intimate. Esther decides to leave them and walks back to the hostel. In the middle of the night, Doreen is brought back to Esther's hotel room door, vomiting drunk. Esther decides to leave her in the hallway, making her mind distance herself from Doreen. Esther also decided to ignore several Ladies' Day functions and instead lounges in bed and spends time in Central Park. JC calls Esther to the office where she talks very frankly with her about preparations she'll need to make if she wants to become an editor in New York. Esther spends the rest of the morning reading manuscripts at the office and then catches up with the other contest winners for a banquet. She attends the banquet and a movie premiere later in the afternoon. Esther starts to feel ill and catches a cab home with Betsy, one of the contest winners. Back at the hotel, she is deadly ill and learns that all of the contest winners at the banquet ended up with grave food poisoning. As she is recovering from food poisoning, she gets a call from Constantine, a UN simultaneous interpreter who is acquainted with Mrs. Willward, Buddy Willward's mother. Esther goes out with Constantine to an ethnic restaurant and meets other fascinating people. Hearing their accomplishments, Esther realizes her own shortcomings. She plans to seduce Constantine, reveling in the thought of losing her virginity to an acquaintance of Buddy Willward's mother. But they end up merely sleeping next to each other in his apartment. As the internship ends, Esther is feeling more and more disjointed and unable to enjoy her experiences in New York. During a photo shoot for the magazine, she finally breaks down and weeps openly. On her final night in the city, she goes on a date with Marco. He is a stuck-up women hater who gives her a diamond stick pin at the beginning of the date and later assaults her. He demands her to have the diamond stick pin back. The diamond was in her bag, which flew out of her bag and landed somewhere in the mud during the assault. She leaves Marco on his hands and knees in the mud looking for his diamond. She returns to her hotel room and one by one drops her clothes and undergarments out of the window of her room. The next day, Esther trades her bathrobe with Betsy for a skirt and blouse and makes a trip home to New England. Her mother picks her up and tells Esther that she didn't get accepted into the writing program that she had applied to. Esther feels hopeless as she looks at spending the rest of the summer in her mother's house. Over the next few weeks, Esther is unable to do little and slides into depression. She keeps wearing the blouse and skirt she got from Betsy and refuses to take a bath or wash her hair. She tries to write but is unable to read, write, or sleep. When she asks the family doctor for more sleeping pills after receiving a prescription the previous week, the doctor refers her to Dr. Gordon, a psychiatrist. Esther dislikes Dr. Gordon, who is a young, successful man with a seemingly perfect family. She isn't cooperative with him, so he suggests to her mother that Esther would benefit from electroshock therapy. Esther undergoes a painful treatment that leaves her terrified of the procedure. At this point, Esther becomes obsessed with the thought of suicide. There are several unsuccessful or aborted attempts, slitting wrists, hanging, drowning. She weds herself into the crawl space of her house and takes dozens of sleeping pills. She is missing for several days and wakes up in a hospital. Later, she is moved to a state mental hospital. Novelist Philomena Guina, who funds Esther's college scholarship and who was once herself committed to an asylum, provides financial support to move Esther out to a private hospital. The new hospital is much more comfortable and humane than the state hospital. There, Esther meets many patients, including Joanne, another student from Esther's college and a one-time romantic interest of Buddy Willard. Esther also meets Dr. Nolan, a female who understands Esther far better than Dr. Gordon did. Dr. Nolan isn't horrified to learn that Esther hates her mother. The doctor limits all visitors to Esther, and Esther is so grateful. Dr. Nolan is also aware of Esther's electroshock treatments. Under Dr. Nolan's care, when these treatments are again administered to Esther, they are much less distressing experience, both physically and emotionally. Esther continues to have contact with Joanne, who eventually moves into an apartment, being roommates with a nurse from the hospital. Esther agrees to visit Joanne in the new apartment, although she has no interest in doing so. With Dr. Nolan's help, Esther purchases a diaphragm, which frees her from the fear of pregnancy if she decides to lose her virginity. That day, she meets a man named Arwin, a bookish 26-year-old math professor. The two end up at Erwin's house and make love. Following the intercourse, Esther finds that she is hemorrhaging heavily. She asks Erwin to drop her off at Joanne's apartment, and Joanne takes her to the emergency room where she is treated. Joanne soon moves out of her apartment and returns to the hospital. One morning, Joanne's psychiatrist comes to see Esther and tells her that Joanne has not returned from the previous evening. Esther, however, has no idea where Joanne might be. Later, Joanne's body is found in the woods. She had hanged herself. Buddy Willard comes to the hospital to visit Esther and asks whether there is something about him that drives women crazy, since both Esther and Joanne ended up in a mental hospital after being with him. The novel ends with this note, with Esther stepping into a room in the hospital. She will be interviewed to determine whether she is fit to leave the hospital and return to Thank you for watching the video. We hope you find this summary useful. You can purchase this book from booksmandala.com. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to our channel for more bookish content.